here with your boy. It's the coach, and I'm here with my man Jesse. What's good, Jess? How you doing?
Doing fantastic. It's a little weird being on this side of things. I'm used to hosting when we go live, but now I'm over on your channel. I get to just kind of kick it, relax, and let you kind of drive. So feels kind of nice, not going to lie.
It feels good, man. Hey, look, I'm glad to have you on this side of things. You know, this is the Niners at Night show. Every Monday, me and Jesse are going to be putting this show out. It's going to be on my channel. It's going to be on his channel. We're going to swap it up. We're going to mix it up. And obviously, we're going to be here to talk about the latest and greatest with the Niners. Obviously, when the season starts, we'll have a lot more to talk about. But for now, we got to get into the middle of the season, which the offseason is starting. And Jesse, I feel like we don't have all of our ducks in a row yet. I don't feel like we're necessarily all the way there. And top of the docket, we could talk about Christian McCaffrey. We could talk about Jauan Jennings, which is something we'll touch on those things later. But for now, the lead dog right now is the Brandon Aiyuk deal, right? And we already saw this coming, and what kind of got us on the right track with all of this was the draft, understanding that the Niners were potentially trying to shop BA and Deebo Samuels or Jauan Jennings at the time. And that really didn't cement things for us. But when Amon-Ra St. Brown got paid and he got that price tag, I feel like that set the floor. And with that, I feel like we've got to start looking at BA in a whole new light. I mean, this is something that we didn't want to happen, but the cat's out the bag. He got paid. Amon-Ra St. Brown, with his new contract, recently reset the wide receiver floor, and we're hearing reports that Brandon Aiyuk is essentially wanting that type of money. Now, with the way that fits inside of the 49ers is he will be hands down. I mean, he'd be on Nick Bosa status. Let's kind of put this where it belongs. For BA to get paid the money that Amon-Ra St. Brown just got paid, he wants to be valued on the same level as Nick Bosa. And right now, the first volley over the battlefield into this whole saga, really we've talked about back and forth on social media, following and unfollowing, cryptic tweets, hollering at the Steelers, hearing from agents. But really, the only thing that matters is what tangibly happens in real time. And BA did not show up to OTAs. And that's emblematic of how he's usually shown up and dealt with the team, is that BA is present. He's around. So how do you feel about this? What are your takes on the new floor that's been set by Amon-Ra St. Brown? How Brandon Aiyuk fits in with the 49ers, and does he have a dog in the fight? How do you feel?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I was just looking it up as you were talking, and I was trying to get the dates in order. And you know, one thing that I feel like we haven't necessarily discussed is how much is the timing of the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal really throwing a monkey wrench into this. And let me kind of lay it out for you.
Okay.
We don't know the figures for sure. We don't know exactly what Brandon Aiyuk is asking for. We have an idea, and it's recently come out that he is now looking for something closer to what Amon-Ra St. Brown was asking for. Now, we heard earlier in the offseason that BA and the 49ers were far apart. In my mind, far apart was like, hey, if they're trying to get a deal closer to what Deebo Samuel has, closer to $23 million, let's say he wants to be around $27 million. They're far apart, but the 49ers know, like, hey, you know what? If we let this thing drag out and things go our way, we can probably get him for that $25, maybe $27 million, what he's asking for. So what happens is the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal dropped the day before the draft. I just looked at the dates.
Jesus.
So it drops the day before the draft. The 49ers have zero intention on trading Brandon Aiyuk, which is what I had been hearing the whole time. And it seemed like, yeah, they were listening, but they weren't actively shopping him. So now all of a sudden that drops. Their ears pinned back fully in on the draft. That's the focus. You got to figure out your players. So they go through the draft. They then get out of the draft, which was your opportunity to trade Brandon Aiyuk if you were going to make that trade. And now all of a sudden, you kind of like get your bearings about you as a team and you realize, oh, well, Brandon Aiyuk was asking for, let's say, $27 million before. We were kind of willing to eventually meet that demand. But what we don't realize just happened is while we were going through the draft process, that demand just changed to $30 million because Amon-Ra St. Brown just got that.
Okay. So, but let me chime in. I understand there's a difference. There's a market, right? Mm-hmm. And Amon-Ra St. Brown setting the market is viable, right? If I'm in BA's position, I am coming back to the negotiation table and I'm saying, hey, look, the floor's been reset. I know what I'm worth to this team juxtaposed to what Amon-Ra St. Brown is worth to the Lions, and let's play ball. We're either on par or I'm better. There's no way I produce less than what he's doing. But what fits in the market versus how you're utilized in the offense are two completely different things, Jesse. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's my problem with BA getting paid. I want him to get paid, but at the same time, I want it to be practical as well. I just don't think that 30 plus million. I mean, let me put it like this. It's like if you're helping somebody out and the requests of them helping you out are so ridiculous and out of the scope of it being reasonable that it's not even the fact that I can't help you, but it's you don't want me to help you. Yeah, you just don't want the help. And I feel like asking for $30 million from BA's perspective, or $30 million plus rather, I think that that's him essentially asking for a trade. I don't think that that's real negotiation, jargon. I think for him to stay on that is him essentially saying, well, I'm ready to be traded. Because I just don't see any way in hell that he gets paid that. What do you think?
Well, and that was kind of the thing. I remember early on in the offseason, one of the conversations we had around this was we both expected it to get done. I don't think either of us expected him to get traded, but both things could be true, which was he deserves to get paid.
Right.
But eventually he may ask for way too much. And I think if you asked us 2 months ago what too much was, we may not have had an exact number. But 30 million would have been way too much.
That's what worries me about this, Jesse, is that it's not the fact that 30 million is too much, but I think it's nobody. I don't think anybody wants to admit that nobody saw 30 million on the horizon.
No.
Right. No, none of us even in our wildest conversations about this, right, where we scenarioed this out and said, all right, well, let's future-proof this. If BA wants to get paid what Debo's making now, like 28, right? And even at 28, we were looking at, well, if he gets paid 28, there's no way Debo's here. He's obviously the leader of the offense. He's the number one option. Not only, this is another thing that I feel like is a little bit missed, is that not only does, for him to want 30 million, it's not him squeezing out Debo. But that means that Trent Williams can't exist on this offense. That means that Christian McCaffrey cannot exist on this offense. George Kittle cannot exist on this offense with Brandon Aiyuk making $30+ million a year. So that's why I'm erring on the side of, is he even serious, or is this a red herring that he's using just to get out of here because he's tired of it? He already knows how he's going to be utilized.
Yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately he wants to get paid. And I'm sure he would prefer that be with the 49ers, but he's not worried about, hey, how does this impact Debo or Kittle or whatever. And quite frankly, no matter what it is, whether he plays out this deal or he signs that deal, the $30 million, let's say, it's not going to impact anything this year. They can make it through this year. It's future years is what they've got to worry about. But the thing, that's kind of what I'm talking about. When I went through that whole draft process and the way things lined up, Coach, I think it's feasible that you said we didn't see 30 million on the horizon. I don't think BA saw 30 million on the horizon.
Yeah, that's why I feel it sounds honestly, and I don't want to do this because I feel like players can get paid guaranteed. Every player in the NFL can get paid guaranteed money this year for the next 10 seasons, and it still won't even make a dent in how much the owners have made off the players. It won't even make a dent. So I'm always pro player. I am.
Sure.
But for me, context matters. And I just think that it's a little too rich for BA to ask for 30 in this offense with how we're built. We're not even an offensively led team, let alone paying a skill player 30 million. Like, we're already looking at paying Brock 50 plus. I believe that even his demands are kind of showing that I don't think BA wants to play ball in certain. If this is, of course, all hypothetical, but if BA is 100% standing on 30, he can't be serious about wanting to stay here. He can't be.
Well, I mean, no. I mean, probably
logically.
Okay, but there is a difference. Like you said, we both are pro player. We want these players to get paid, but then there's a separation, which is, yes, I want BA to get paid. This is my conversation about the Brock Purdy situation, right? Which is, I want Brock to get all the money in the world. He deserves that. He's been criminally underpaid up to this point. So when he gets paid, bro, if he wants 60 million, I hope he gets 60 million. But there's a difference in wanting the player to get that and wanting my team to be the one that forks over that money too, right? Like, I want BA to get his 30 million.
I want to see it. I just don't want it to be us.
But I don't want it to be on the Niners because I got to put team above player when it comes to my rooting interests, right? So it's that's just the way that it has to play out. Listen, BA, if you make 30 million, then have fun over wherever that is. I'll be rooting for you. I'll be watching you. I just don't think the right place is here. And again, it is all hypothetical. We know what Amon-Ra St. Brown got. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what Aiyuk is asking for, but it seems logical, and the report is such. Again, though, BA a month ago or a day before that, I can't imagine was like, hey, Niners, I want 30 million. He may have been at 27 million. And then all of a sudden, Amon-Ra St. Brown gets 30. And he's like, hey, asking price went up. So then I'm going to kick a question back to you.
All right.
All things even, is he as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown? Because that's a question that we've got to have as well. Or a conversation we've got to have as well. If Amon-Ra St. Brown got 30 million and BA is asking for that, just in a vacuum, is he as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown? And does he really deserve that, whether that's with the 49ers or anywhere else?
All right, so I'm going to say something for real now. Like, and this sucks because from what BA is, I love BA's skill set. I love what BA can do. I think that, I mean, you know, it's obvious I'm about to say something sacrilegious because I'm bigging him up. But the truth is that now, March 27th, 10:36 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Amon-Ra St. Brown is better than Brandon Aiyuk. And it sucks to say that because pound for pound, we could be here all day going back and forth about route running, body type, speed, temperament, usage, toughness. We could do it all day. But the facts are is that the market dictates your worth. And for what Amon-Ra St. Brown does for his offense versus what Brandon Aiyuk does for his offense, Amon-Ra St. Brown is utilized more. He's worth more to his offense than Brandon Aiyuk is. And really, Amon-Ra St. Brown is getting paid because he is the number one option on that offense. He is. And Brandon Aiyuk is not. And I don't take any joy in even saying this, but as far as the money is concerned, it's hard to pay BA 30 plus million when you ain't the number one option, bruh. It's hard. With the number one option wanting to get paid, and Christian McCaffrey with the future number one option and Brock Purdy staring you down with 50 million per. It's a shitty time to get paid, bro. Honestly.
It is, but if I'm Brandon Aiyuk's agent, I mean, I'm going to use the same thing that you and I have always talked about, which is when you pay a player, you're not paying them for what they've done. You're paying them for what you are projecting they are going to do. So if I'm BA's agent, I'm like, yeah, I know I'm not the number one option now, but let's look across the landscape of this team. Starting when I actually get paid and that money kicks in next year, are you saying I won't be the number one option next year? Debo's on his way out. Kittle's 33 years old. You got a 29-year-old running back who has no guaranteed money. I am going to be the number one option when this money kicks in. And if not in year one, I will for sure be in year two. So I better get paid like the number one option that I will be. So, you know, that's an argument that could be made as well.
I mean, I understand that it could be an argument for him to chart out and forecast what he's going to do. But then at the same time, you always have the emergence of Brock coming. So, I mean, from my perspective, a lot of this sucks because it's timing. I think that BA is asking for his money in a really weird time. We just lost the Super Bowl. We're in the transition period. And he's a part of a core. Like, I would say that BA is the youngest part of the core, right? He is the youngest player in the core. So if you think about it, everybody else has gotten their money. Everybody else has gotten paid, and they're sitting up. I mean, shit, you got Christian McCaffrey looking for his second bag. So it's just not a good time for him. But what I will say is I believe that his situation lends context. It's not all you pay me what I'm worth or I need to leave. I believe that if there was a compromise where there needed to be a team-friendly deal, where not necessarily friendly as in BA completely just lays on his back, but, man, take a lower number but get more guaranteed. You know what I mean? Or get 26, but get 26, but get 20 up front. You know what I'm saying? Get 26 a year, but really smack them up front and make sure that you're front loaded. But make it worth your while. You know what I'm saying? And then also, I feel like there's also an element to how we get negotiations from certain players because of geographically where we are. The taxes absolutely are trash in this area. So you really could be looking at a couple of players where when you're in the upper one percentile of earners, you're probably looking to yourself like, look, the $4 million that I want is just taxes anyway. You know, so
yeah, you might. I mean, absolutely. They all of this plays. So, all right, let's make a bold prediction then.
All right.
I think we both agree that BA is going to be on this team one way or another, whether it's 50-year option that he plays out or he gets a new deal. But week 1, game 1, does he enter that game with a new deal under his belt? Yes or no? No. Okay.
I don't think he goes into the season with a new deal.
Dang.
They're very far apart. $30 million. Let me put it like this. Nick Bosa, just for context, right? Nick Bosa had one of the best seasons defensively in this franchise last year. And he had to go 0 dark 30 to get his money.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Nick Bosa was like defensive player of the year. Like, he was arguably the best defensive player in football the year that he had. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better year for a contract, right? As a player, you couldn't ask for a better year. Like, led all defensive categories, was on the number 1 defense, played deep into the playoffs, the whole 9. and they still fought Nick to the bitter end. Like, we were nervous, wondering. I remember weeks, like the week before the season, we were all kind of getting prepared to watch us play against Pittsburgh without Nick. They took it down that far. So I don't see it. Where do you see it?
God, dude, this is really a coin toss for me. And I don't, it's the off season, and I know it's easy to accuse, like, these guys are just trying to find something to talk about and clickbait and blah, blah, blah. This ain't,
right.
This ain't,
right.
And
this
people are looking at it.
Though.
Yeah, but people are looking at it at the end of May, and they're like, no way that he doesn't enter the new season without a deal. Like, it's going to get done, guys. Like, you guys are just up here hemming and hawing over nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think we're hemming and hawing over nothing. I really don't. That being said, I think he will enter the season with a new deal. So then I've got a follow-up question for you. Question. And I've got a follow-up question for both of us. So I'll ask myself one follow-up, and then yours is a completely different question. Because we've got a different answer. So my follow-up is does he get $30 million average annual value on his deal? And my answer to that is no, he does not.
No.
So he doesn't. So I think he's got the new deal, but he doesn't reach that $30 million. But the question to you, who doesn't think that he enters the season with a new deal, does he play week 1 then, or is he holding out?
He plays week 1.
Okay.
He plays week 1. One thing about this is what sucks about sports.
You know what just happened, by the way? Real quick, I'll throw this out here. We both are siding with the character of Brandon Aiyuk, which is why we both would love for him to eventually get paid, is we both believe that no matter what, BA is acquiescing to one way or another, whether he's showing up and playing without the new deal in hand, which is your scenario, or he is playing with a new deal in hand, but it's less than what his demands were in the beginning, which shows the character of Brandon Aiyuk, or what we believe it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that BA is kind of standing on business because he knows where the bodies are buried. I think he sees the certain type of guys that get paid and what their true professionalism is. And he's saying to himself, like, he's got that middle child syndrome. It's like, look, I see you baby the babies, and I see you let the oldest get away with everything. You know what I'm saying? And then I get held to the highest standard of what the team is. I'm the one who got thrown in the doghouse. I'm the one who had to earn my stripes. And all of these guys who presumably went through their own, agoge or whatever, they're the ones who are trying to push me through. But as I'm watching, I'm seeing that none of these guys work as hard as me. None of these guys have an attention to detail or show up or really push the culture as hard as me. And, like, I don't want to say none, but some of the guys that are getting paid real money. And I think that's kind of like the common denominator. That's really how he's moving. Like, it's not the fact that he wants to get paid. I feel like BA has kind of like an angst behind him wanting to get paid, as if he's not taking no for an answer. And for me, it's not that I don't think that he won't play. I just don't think that he's going to get a deal. And also, we can't miss the forest through the trees. Like, this deal with BA, as far as contracts are concerned, the Niners can franchise him and just sit on this. So, it's not smart for him not to show up. You know what I mean? And that's just character aside. Now, character aside, I think him sitting out week 1 will be completely, like, opposite of what he's posed himself to be as a professional. That's why I got him playing. BA has always shown me to be kind of like a player's player. But I think that he's going to push this $30 million, and the Niners are not budging because intrinsically they have a financial way of how they move, because it's all about being profitable. And I believe that they'll probably come back and circle the block next year.
If he doesn't have a deal and the decision is, okay, am I sitting out or am I playing without this deal? That's a tough decision because it's a calculated risk. If they go in week 1 and they play the Jets on Monday Night Football and they win that game going away, the schedule gets pretty easy for a couple weeks, So
Yeah.
without BA, you could easily start 3-0.
Yeah.
And then what leverage does BA? I mean, BA really loses all leverage. So I don't think that I don't. If I was advising him, I would advise him to play and go get his numbers, and then obviously do what he can to stay healthy. And if he's got, that's the other thing though, right? If he doesn't have a deal in hand and he has any sort of injury, even if it's the smallest thing, it's like, I ain't playing. I'm not playing.
True.
Why?
I mean,
I'm not going to play through this.
And in a sense, that's why I feel like Christian McCaffrey is moving the way he is right now. I feel like he's got no guaranteed money. And he's coming into his final year where he's had over 400 touches, the most that he's ever had in his career. He's the tip of the spear as far as what the team is concerned doing on offense. And he's seeing Debo getting paid $28 million, Trent's on his way out, BA is holding out for a deal, Jauan Jennings hasn't signed his tender yet, and I'm about to get ran through the coals when I show up because of really his resume precedes him. It's like, well, Christian doesn't want to get off the field. Christian is always going to take all of the reps involved. Like, I feel like in his sense, he's even throttling back in a sense where it's like, wait a minute. All right, so look, I got a deal. Carolina paid me because they knew they were running me into the ground. That lateraled over to you guys. Now, for what it's worth, I think it's amazing that I'm on the team that finally fits my skill set and I'm playing with great players. But, my man, I got you guys to the Super Bowl, and I was hands down the key reason why we got there. I'm coming up on one more year, and I'm 1.5 years off 30. So I need my last bag as well. I really do believe that this could be emblematic of some of the guys of the core kind of like making plans.
Well, realistically, we don't fully know what's going on with CMC. I think the assumption is that he's holding out for more money, but his contract is 100% playing in this one way or another. He may not be holding out for more money. You had the report come out from Florio where he said CMC's not showing up because of he's wanting a new deal. That can be true, but that doesn't mean that money's not playing into this. Right, he may not be going to the Niners and saying, you better pay me or else I'm not showing up. But he easily could be looking at it going, I don't have any guaranteed money. I can't go in there and tweak a hammy in May on an OTA that's voluntary because I don't have anything that's going to protect me to get paid this year. If I get hurt in OTAs doing something stupid and I'm done for the year, that's it. Like, I don't get nothing guaranteed coming my way. So he's definitely making a business decision to not be there. That's very different than demanding money in a new contract, but that doesn't mean that money's not playing into this situation.
Right. I feel that way. I feel that way about a lot of the players right now, especially on offense. I feel like Jauan Jennings. Let me sneak another topic in there. Do you feel like Jauan Jennings is worth the money? I mean, he's got a second-year tender on him. Niners, that's about $5 million in change per year. He hasn't signed his tender yet, which obviously means that he's trying to force the Niners' hand into a long-term deal. Before we state the obvious, let's just give him his flowers. Jauan Jennings has been class personified.
Yeah,
he's been reliable, and his last tape was his best tape. He went off in the Super Bowl. Does he have the leg? Does he have a leg to stand on, and why doesn't he? Especially, and I'm building the argument for Jauan Jennings, but especially when you have guys like Kyle Juszczyk, who's the highest paid fullback on the offense. I mean, I feel like Jauan Jennings has way more of a usage rate than he does. So why do you believe that he should be gone, or he shouldn't be able? He should sign this tender and just basically sit down and shut up.
I mean, I understand it from his standpoint and wanting to get paid and wanting that security. I completely understand it, but this is exactly the same as the Brandon Aiyuk situation in that, I understand where he's coming from and why he would want to get paid. I'm not paying him. For what? For his 19 catches? I mean, in this offense, Kendrick Bourne was here and then he was gone. And Jennings has filled in admirably. But when Jennings is gone, that's why you drafted 2 more wide receivers. You'll figure it out. Like, he is replaceable at 19 catches a year. He just is. So, and quite frankly, if he were to hit the open market, he's not getting a big time deal and all that. He's not going to be a number 2 anywhere unless it's for a bad team.
Right.
Like, that's not who he is. He's going to be a really good number 3 somewhere on a good team, hopefully for him. And he'll get, his $8 million a year or whatever he gets, and he'll be fine with that. I could see him signing like a 3-year, $24 million deal with $16 million guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And the team has a full out after 2 years. Like, that's kind of where I see Jauan Jennings landing roughly with his next deal. And I'm not paying him if I'm the 49ers. I'm letting him play for his $5 million this year and just letting it roll. I mean, Pearsall's 24 years old. I can guarantee you that the 49ers feel very comfortable with 24-year-old Pearsall filling in and getting 19 catches this year and 30 targets or whatever it is. So, yeah, I'm not paying Jauan Jennings.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe if Jauan wanted to get paid 2 years ago, he would have had a dog in the fight. But I do feel like we're in a transition phase right now, and quite frankly, his skill set is kind of getting phased out. We have a comment here from Jeff that says, Coach, can we talk about how BA's best year is only about 1,300 yards? There are multiple wide receivers coming in doing that. Their rookie or second year in the league. I get Aiyuk is not our first option, but come on, $30 million. How do you feel about that? I mean, I feel like that's one thing that BA probably hates about it, because he's saying, I got 1,300 and I'm not the number 1 option.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if I was the number 1 option. I mean, if they force fed him, by the way, that typing is coming through real loud.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
But it's fine for me. I'm just saying for the people listening, they may ruin the experience. But, imagine if he was on Dallas getting force fed the way that CeeDee Lamb is getting force fed. His numbers would be astronomical, or getting force fed the way Tyreek Hill is. So, it's hard to look at him realistically and just hold him to numbers. But really the point, Jeff, is what is he in this offense? What is the max he will be? If the 49ers have a vision for him that 2 years from now, for a 3-year time span, he's going to be the number 1 weapon and grow with Brock Purdy, then you kind of got to pay him. But if that vision's not there, then paying him doesn't make any sense. Can we also talk about Jeff looking dapper? That's a great haircut in Hard Part. Can I throw that out there?
Fire. You see, you got the John B going on.
Yeah.
I see you, Jeff. Jeff be getting them. You know what I'm saying? You rizzed out, Jeff. I see you, baby. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I understand exactly where he's coming from. Like, BA is kind of a slave to where he is and his utilization. And in his mind, I'm sure he is a number 1 receiver. But from what we've seen thus far, just $30 million is just a little too rich for our blood, man. I don't see it. So, moving into our next topic, we've got confidence or delusion, Jess. Fred Warner emphasized that it is not an issue of if the 49ers win a Super Bowl, but rather when. Do you agree or disagree with his assertion? Now, we already know, for those of you who are not Niners fans watching us, which probably is about 95% of us right now, the Niners are coming off of a Super Bowl loss. We've been to 2 NFC Championship games in the past 5 years, 3 NFC Championship games if you want to count last year, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and we've had 3 quarterback changes, with finally coming in on Mr. Irrelevant, with Brock Purdy coming in his first full season last year, getting us to the Super Bowl, then ended up losing in overtime. With all of the losses that we've had, right, Jesse, the loss to the Rams at home with the drop pick by Jaquiski Tartt, the missed throw to Emmanuel Sanders the 2 years prior by Jimmy Garoppolo, the UCL injury within the first two series of the NFC Championship game against Philly, and then now overtime gate, if you will, with the last Super Bowl. I understand that we're gonna get rhetoric and propaganda from all the guys. They're gonna be able to be on one note, right? Because it's their job. But this year just seems a little different when nobody else is really talking like that. And you kind of expect that from Fred because he's more of the spokesperson of our team. But in a sense, it kind of rang hollow. And it seemed as though that he was rather pushing back on the question that he was asked more than speaking with confidence. So with this, how do you feel about the recent comments?
I mean, I want the players on the team to have that vote of confidence and believe that. You know, it's not if, it's when. We're going to get it done. You know, Kittle famously had the quote after the Super Bowl in 2019 where he was on the sideline and he's like, I will be back and I'll be back with a vengeance. And he was right. They made it back. You know, unfortunately, they came up short again and played the same Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and all those guys over there, but they did make it back. But there is no guarantee. I mean, just from the outside looking in, especially for Fred Warner's career or this cast of characters, the main guys that are on this team, we've talked all about them, the Aiyuks, the Debos, the Kittles, the Trents, the CMCs, and everybody there. For that crop of players, it is a major if. It is not at all win, because if it doesn't happen this year, it's not win. It's just not happening. Now, Fred Warner's a little bit younger. Him and Bosa and Purdy and hopefully Aiyuk, and these guys can be the new wave. You know, maybe Pearsall gets added to that, what have you, and they can make a push again in a couple years. But this team, as it's constructed, it is very much if, because this is it. This is the end of the road for them. So hopefully they make it, but it's certainly not win for this team as a whole. That's for sure.
I agree with you. It felt like wishful thinking. It was a little desperate. It felt like he was pushing back more than he was affirming how the team felt. Let's just face it. Right now, we've got some holes and we got some really big questions. We got some questions on some of the things that we've never really had to worry about in recent years. Number one is defensive depth, primarily on the defensive line, and now with our linebacking core. One thing that we've been able to really rest our laurels on is the development of our defense, the youth, the guys that have come up, that late round draft picks. It's no secret. We were supporters of Trey Lance when he was here, but now that he's gone, man, that tab is coming in right now. We're starting to feel
big
it.
time. Yeah,
we're starting to feel
time.
that tab, man. And you're starting to look at imperfect vessels where, a Dre Greenlaw or an Azeez Al-Shaair is a good pick when you have good players to put them around, right? They need the time to flourish and to develop. But when you're throwing rookies on the field immediately, we got to either have the veteran leadership to surround them to be able to play, to get them on par, or we got to count on them to pull their weight. And right now, it's looking like we're going to be counting on a lot of guys to pull their weight this year. They're not going to be insulated. This isn't kind of like more like I would say like more of a Hufanga role. Remember when we just got Talanoa and he was very rough around the edges, but there was just so much fucking talent around him that it was like, we could really just streamline the skill set. Just go forward. Go get in the lines. Go get on the line of scrimmage. Get in the backfield. Handle your business because we got Jaquiski Tartt around you. We got Jimmy Ward around you. You could go out there and just have a ball, kid. And at one point, if you really didn't know ball, you were thinking that Talanoa Hufanga was just a lights-out player when he first came into the league. But the truth of the matter is that he was afforded to be able to play as reckless as he was because he played on such a good defense. I don't necessarily see that happening for a lot of the young guys this year. Like, Malik Mustafa isn't going to be surrounded by veteran leadership. Malik Mustafa is going to have to be a guy. He's going to have to come in and actually produce, right? We're not looking for Dominic Pooney to come in here and just kind of pace us through. He's not going to get the Aaron Banks role where he's going to come in. If his body isn't right, then he's going to get shelved. Nah, if Dominic Pooney does not play this year, that is a failed pick. That he's got to play in order for us to actually make a difference. So, same thing with Ricky Pearsall. If Ricky Pearsall does not play this year, we don't have that many. We don't have an embarrassment of riches where we could just sit our first round pick and use him as a slot guy or as a return guy. How do you feel about the new landscape of just how the players are going to traverse through this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You know, it's interesting because you brought up Trey Lance, and that got me thinking. Yeah, I mean, the the tab is due, and they've got to pay it, and we're starting to see those effects. But this happens across the board, right? Because luckily for them, they were able to fill that role with the last pick in the draft. But you look at some of the other positions. You know, the reason that Hargrave is here and got paid out the wazoo is because Kinlaw was a botch pick, right? So that was to make up for Kinlaw. The reason that Floyd's here and before that it was Chase is because Drake Jackson seems to be a botch pick. So you can go up and down this team, and it's not just the 49ers. You can do this across the board. But
right.
big money gets
we're not
spent.
special.
Yeah, big money gets spent on free agents, usually to cover up the flubs of the draft, because everybody would prefer to build through the draft and stay inexpensive and constantly restock the cupboard. But that has not been the case, and you're going to have misses. And those misses are more glaring when you have less picks because of a trade for Trey Lance that didn't work out. So there's a lot that goes into it. But you're right. I mean, I think if this team is, you know, one of the things that we look at from this team is there are some unknowns, certainly. But it feels like there's more depth this year than there was last year, at least going into the season. Last year, remember, Chase wasn't here yet. Gregory wasn't here. It was like, dude, there is no depth at edge. Now it feels like we got a little bit of depth. Feels like we've got the same depth on the interior, if not a little bit more. The offensive line, we were pissed about it last year. We're a little less pissed because we feel like, all right, some of these rookies might be able to contribute. But if these rookies don't contribute, now all of a sudden we're right back in the same situation as last year. So whether these guys start right away or just play a role, at some point during the season, Pooney's going to be shoulder tapped and asked to fill a role. Pearsall is going to be shoulder tapped and asked to fill a role. And that's going to happen for all these players, Malik Mustafa, Renardo Green, all of them. And they have to be ready right now. They have to be ready. And that is probably different than the way it's been in the past. And we know that Kyle doesn't necessarily like to play these guys early, but when he's forced, he will, and he might be forced more than ever this season.
Yeah, and that is something that is going to be something that you have to look at. Kyle doesn't do well with rookies, especially hand-picked rookies. Everybody who he picks, he kind of goes through this maturation process with them where, in a sense, that he has to know that they are going to feel the skill set that he has for them because he needs culpable deniability. In my opinion, that can't happen with Ricky Pearsall. He's going to have to play. Like, Malik Mustafa is going to have to play. Dominic Pooney has to play. I'm looking at rookies right now where I really do feel like in the past year or maybe 2 years, we've transitioned from wealth of riches where, oh, this guy can ease his way in. He can play around guys. We've got a lot of veterans. This guy can get himself up to snuff. We only need a guy that can we only need a Robert Bill that has a really good first step because we got a good enough defense around him. I feel like that's gone now. Like, if these guys don't come in and show and prove, then what happens is that not only are they not contributing, but they're almost behind the rookie classes that are actually contributing now. That's the difference between an old team and a young team, is that with a younger team, the rookies tend to get on the field earlier because there's not that much solid guys at positions where the competition is still fertile. Guys can still end up getting ousted. And names and institutions on teams get picked off. You know, look at Quan Alexander. Quan Alexander was a big get for us at the time when we signed him. He was supposed to be the tip of the spear, basically our Reuben Foster apology, right? Like, we're going to get this guy in here. He's going to be our guy. He got ousted through the competition here. Like, barely had 2 good years here because he couldn't stay on this team because of the competition. That's why I'm harping on the Devondre Campbell angle with D. Winters and Jalen Graham. Like, if Devondre Campbell finds a way to make it to week 1, we are officially a tier below what we were as an organization. We got to be able to face facts. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have to contribute. They have to contribute. We cannot have another draft class where everybody's redshirted. I mean, if let me put it like this. If Hufanga doesn't get injured last year, we're looking at last year's draft class going, what the F was that? But at least Jair Brown, their first pick that they made, was able to come in and play only because of an injury. But if we didn't know what Jair Brown was yet, and we just weren't sure, and we're like, okay, now he's going to start this year. That's a major question mark. We don't yet know. Moody, I mean, it was a kicker. You have Latu, who would have been cut if he didn't get hurt. Yeah. You had Willis really not contribute. I mean, you can go up and down the whole class and go, dude, what the hell is going on? But Jair Brown kind of saved it. And now that we're a year later, we can look at it and say, all right, through training camp and the season and attrition, maybe some of these guys step up. I know that you're big on Luter. I'm big on Graham, Winters. That's great. But this class that was just brought in, because they do have a first round pick and they do have a second round pick, they can't go through a whole year and not know what the hell they have. They have to have some contribution from these guys immediately and throughout the course of this year, because these guys may not be called upon to be starters week 1, but they're going to have some sort of role, whether it's rotational, whether it's kick return, punt return, and then eventually players are going to go down and they're going to have to step up and play right away. They're going to have to show that they're developed and that their 5 years in college is doing something for them and they're ready to go. So this year, unlike others, there's going to have to be contributions that are made if this team is going to have those Super Bowl aspirations, because that's what's kind of holding this all together. Is we don't know if the starting roster is better or worse, but we all feel better about the depth because we feel good about this rookie class. But if this class doesn't pan out right away, all of a sudden that depth is gone. So.
Right. Understood, bro. So, speaking of depth and moving into the next side of our team, we've talked about BA making this $30 million. We talked about CMC holding out for his. We talked about younger players that have ousted older players who got their money. Let's talk about the player who has gotten their money, Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa was at OTAs this season, this past offseason, and he all but admitted the fact that he was there off of like the personal request of Kyle Shanahan. He made it known that he was asked to be there. Not only did he make it known that he was asked to be there, but during his comments, he also made more comments alluding to the fact that camp was basically active recovery for him and he got a chance to see everybody. But this in no way was actually helping him get better. So let's just cut to the chase, because I'm over it, bro. I'm over it. This guy's making $30+ million a year. He's held out. He's a diva, okay? He doesn't want to hang out with the team or be with the team during the offseason. He wants to do his own thing. Held out all year, started slow, even admitted that he started slow because he missed camp, all right? Threw the defensive coordinator under the bus, said that they weren't prepared, and then on top of it, says that, that's another topic, but endorses Nick Sorensen. What does Nick Bosa have to do this season to make you believe he's worth his current price tag? What does he have to do?
I mean, I think that we're off to a good start. One of the things that we've talked about a lot on our shows together, really you've brought up a lot, which is when you get paid big time money, you go from basically employee mentality to CEO mentality. 9 to 5 doesn't cut it anymore. You might need to be available on Saturday. You might need to be available at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night. Like when you start getting paid big money, that's kind of the unwritten rule that comes with the shift in title. That's what's happening with Bosa right now.
Okay.
The unwritten rule is that he got shoulder tapped to be a leader of this team and show up when other guys weren't showing up because of contract things or what have you. They needed a leader there. He showed up. Now, he kind of made it known he wasn't necessarily like keen with being there, but he was there nonetheless, right? So I think that he's getting off to a good start. He's going to have to get back to wrecking games. I mean, he single-handedly is going to have to impact the results of some games this year. We're going to have to see him be the reason, that final drive. Exactly, that final drive from Geno Smith isn't there in week 5 or whenever they play Seattle because he's the one making a big time sack or getting in his face and hitting him for a pick. Those types of things, we're going to have to see that impact happen throughout this year. And I hate to just put it on a sack number, but he certainly is going to have to do a hell of a lot better than 10.5 sacks. And he's going to have to be in, near the upper part of the league. We're going to have to see him in the top 3. We're going to have to see him stay healthy, and we're going to have to see him impact some of these games as to why the 49ers are winning. We can't have essentially 2 Super Bowls, whether he was being held or what was going on over there, where he's basically a non-factor for big chunks of that game. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. We expect this team to make the playoffs. He's going to have to be a major impact every single time. Say what you want about Eric Armstead. A lot of people said he was overpaid and he didn't do this and he didn't do that and he was a run stuffer and we paid him as a defensive end, but he ended up moving inside and being a tackle and blah, 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 blah. One thing I will say is I don't care what those regular season numbers said. He was elite every time they got to the playoffs, and that included last season when he was on a torn meniscus. Nick Bosa has to be elite when it matters most. Not sometimes, but every single time when you're getting paid quarterback money. That's what we need to see from Nick Bosa.
I agree with 1,000%, man. The biggest thing with me with Nick is that he just coincidentally does not show up in the biggest moments where we need him. I feel like I understand being able to set him up for him to be in the most successful position. I get that. Setting your best players up for success is the job of a coach. I understand that. But there is something to be said about the physical, raw application of being a superstar. Nick Bosa is not making leadership money. He's not making best player on the team money. Nick Bosa is making superstar money. He's making superstar money. All right. So, in my estimation, I need more cowbell. Like he got to give me more than that, And my biggest thing with Nick is that I would just love to see his raw application to his pass rush. I mean, for as technical as he is, for as sound as he is, he's got good hands, great feet, man. But at times, dare I say it, I feel like maybe this is something where, I mean, if I'm being fair to Nick, maybe he did have a problem with Coach Wilkes because he didn't necessarily, Coach Wilkes maybe did not necessarily understand how to marry the front 7 with the back 4, right? And understanding like, hey, you're kind of spinning our wheels right here. We don't have enough energy to be able to carry out these stunts and blitzes the way you're carrying these out versus what you're throwing on the back end. And it's really not helping us get home because really in the pass rush, it really is a game of inches. It truly is a second or a millisecond there and a half second off if you don't get things done. If I'm being fair to Nick, but I would never go as far to say as he had a down season last year because he didn't, but it wasn't elite. It was not an elite year. And I believe that, this is a good start. His comments just rubbed me the wrong way. Just how he just kind of was big time in the process. Really, I believe with most of the guys being out, with being Christian McCaffrey wasn't there. I believe Fred Warner wasn't there. I think that Kyle was, in a way, looking at the team saying, hey, look, we got a batch full of new guys, not only rookies, but just new guys. Draft picks, be damn, free agents. And we need somebody to come in here and show and prove. Like, we got to have somebody to hold the banner. And, my man, we're paying you a shit ton of money for you to just show up and 9 to 5 it.
Yeah. And he did. He did. Maybe not in the way that you would want, but I mean that's really what it comes down to, though, is what he's getting paid at his position is elite money across the NFL. Okay. He's getting paid to be one of the biggest impact players in the whole entire league, not just the San Francisco 49ers. When you look across the league, you want to look at the top 10 guys, you do your NFL top 100, you want him in that top 10. Like, that's kind of what you're expecting from Bosa at this price tag. He needs to be an elite game changer. And I think that there is something to be said about the Wilks thing. That was probably the biggest complaint I had with Wilks, is that I felt like there was no creativity when it came to the pass rush. The stunts, the twists,
Very vanilla.
the showing blitz and backing out of it. It was like the secondary was great and coached up and did a very good job. You saw improvement across the board. There was clearly his fingerprint put on that secondary. But when it came to that front seven and really the front four, there was just no creativity. That being said, Bosa is getting paid elite money, which means even if there's no creativity, you got to find a way to get home and just beat your guy one-on-one or beat the double, whatever that is.
Yeah,
you got to find a way to get home. Yep.
You got to win. You got to win.
I can't. It's the same thing that we talk about Deebo Samuel, where it's like, man, you're manufacturing touches for him because he can't beat press man. You got to manufacture touches behind the line of scrimmage. You can't do that when you're paying a guy $28 million. Well, with Bosa, I may not be able to manufacture you sacks with a stunt and a twist up front. Sometimes you just got to get home at $34 million.
Yeah. So speaking with Nick Bosa and, his commentary, let's just go ahead and bring up the new guy. So Nick Sorensen has received support from his players on defense. What is his genius? What is his genuine importance to the defense this season? And where do you anticipate him making an early impact and dropping? And where would you see a drop off in deficiency? So basically, I'm asking you is, it's clear that Nick Sorensen was a player's choice. Throughout all of the guys that we looked at coming into the defensive coordinator candidacy, whether it had been Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, I believe Pete Carroll was a name in there one time. Vic Fangio was a name thrown in there one time. We settled on Nick Sorensen, but we can get into the, who said no, who said yes, who did we say get lost, who jilted us. That's a whole nother conversation. But for what it's worth, now that comments have come out, it seems as though that Nick Sorensen was a player's pick. And Nick Bosa all but said so in his recent comments. I mean, when Nick talks, people listen. But Nick Bosa basically he was asked a question, how well did you know Nick Sorensen before he became a defensive coordinator? Nick Bosa answers in a comment in an interview, I knew him pretty well. He was always a good dude around the facility. He did our ball meetings, so he's good in the front of a group. He's a good leader. He knows the scheme really well, which is good. I was happy to see him promoted. He called me in the offseason. We talked. I just congratulated him. I think he's going to bring something similar to what we did with D'Amico Ryans. I'm gonna give you the follow-up question, Jess. When you say similar to D'Amico, what do you mean? The energy or the system? Maybe a little different energy, but I just think knowing the system from the front to the back, I think he knows how it ties in, and he has been around some really good coaches. I think it will be pretty seamless, and I think we'll be firing on all cylinders. So, with that said, how do you feel like Nick Sorensen is going to fit into the defense? And what particularly do you think Nick Bosa was trying to illuminate with likening Nick Sorensen to D'Amico Ryans?
I mean, I think the obvious is that he's a player like D'Amico was. You know, he knows how to treat players. He knows how to lead players. He knows what it's like to be a player. And so he has that going for him. And I think that that is well respected in any locker room. I think somebody who comes in and says, "Hey, I can do your job at a high level. I also went through this. I may not have been you, Nick Bosa, but I had a long career in the NFL and I was pretty effective." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's some of the things that helped make me have this longevity. Here are the things that work. Here are the things that don't work. So I think from that standpoint, you're going to get a lot of what you got from D'Amico as far as that consistency of being a player's coach and a guy who played in the league himself and had a decent career. So you're going to have that carryover. The system thing is interesting because clearly the system goes as Kyle Shanahan wants it to go. Right. You know, Wilkes was brought in, asked to run their system, learn their system, and essentially just do what they already had in place for him to do. Now he was unable to do that at the level that they expected, didn't click maybe with the players on that level. He's a little bit of an older guy, a little bit more no nonsense, and maybe that didn't click. So really, all I'm looking for him to do is to keep those players happy and for them to fire on all cylinders and get back to whatever it is that they feel like was missing from last season. Mm-hmm. What I also find interesting, though, is Kyle is the type of guy that runs a defense that gives his offense problems. And what he's ran for the whole time he's been here has been a defense that's given his offense problems. That being said, what gives his offense problems is now changing rapidly. Last year, we saw a lot of simulated pressures give his offense problems. We saw press man give his offense problems. So what was in place prior may change, but not because of Sorensen or even Staley, but because Kyle Shanahan is looking across the league and saying, this is the new meta. This is what now gives my offense problems. These are the things that we are going to run. This is what I need implemented because this is what I struggle to coach against. So if there's a change on this defense, it's not coming from any of those other guys. It's coming because Kyle wants it to change, and he sees the effectiveness that it has against his offense, and he's now fallen in love with it.
That was poetic. It really was. I want to be able to see if he can call a game, because that's coaching in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I've been a part of coaching staffs where the players had more belief in me than I did in my skill set. Mm. When I first came into coaching, I was fresh off playing. So I had like this really tactile grasp on coaching that I felt was really unique, because my entire coaching staff, like the closest guy that had played was like maybe like 6 years he had played his last game. So I came into my coaching staff really gung-ho and really leaning on my expertise from playing. And it backfired. Because a lot of times during games, coaching is coaching and playing is playing. And I understand that there's an aspect and there's a perspective that you can get from coaching because you played and they can help you greatly. But if you don't have the reps coaching, there's no such thing as practice reps that get you ready for the real thing. I'm basically saying all this to say that no matter how much confidence the players have in Nick Sorensen, there will be growing pains. There's going to be growing pains. It's going to be brand new. There's going to be games where we're not going to notice this defense. And there's going to be games where he's not prepared. And I believe that's one of the reasons primarily why Brandon Staley is here. So he can really soften that blow, that new booty blow of like, yo, I am a new coach. I'm a player's coach. But being a player's coach, that doesn't mean that I know what I'm doing when it comes to Sundays. And I will say that this is a little bit rich coming off an endorsement of a coach where, they Cadillac it for Coach Wilkes. It's not even Coach Wilkes. It's not him, but it's the fact that they showed that they were capable of doing something like that. Right? That's what makes me look at this defense and this team differently, where it's not that you had a coach that you didn't want to play for, whatever. It's the fact that there's a level of professionalism that you were willing to let slide because you did not like the coach that you were playing for. And that bothers me. It really does.
Yeah, but I feel like we've seen that across the team in other areas as well. That's a big frustration that we have with Debo at times. It's like, it's different for everybody. Brandon Aiyuk ends up in a doghouse because I got to only assume that he just wasn't doing things the way that Kyle wants. But, on the flip side, Debo can half-ass his routes and not block downfield on a regular basis, and it's okay. It's like, I have no problem with having a high standard. In fact, I prefer it. If you have a high standard, then that's what makes you a winning organization. That's what gets you through to the other side. But
Agreed.
That high standard has to be there for everybody. And it should especially show itself towards the guys that are your big-time players, because if you show you can hold them accountable, then everybody else automatically has to fall in line. They have no choice, because your leaders are being held accountable on a regular basis. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there is going to be growing pains there. And I think people that just assume like, oh, Wilkes sucks and he's out of here, so it's going to get better. Okay. It better.
Right now.
I mean, now you've put a lot of pressure on yourself, because we can talk about at times on third down this and the one play against Minnesota right before half and the running defense was only this and that. But the reality of the situation was that was the number 3 scoring defense in the NFL for as bad as it got at times. And it also got very bad for D'Amico Ryans at times and Robert Saleh at times. So that being said, knowing that it got bad for the 3 previous guys before him, you got to imagine there's going to be some rough patches. And when it's all said and done and you look up at that scoreboard, if it's not at least top 3 in scoring defense, then it was a failure. Because I'll tell you one thing, this defense showed up more so than the offense did in the biggest game of the year. So this defense better be top 3 in scoring. And if they get to the Super Bowl, it better be a dominant unit, just like the one prior was. Otherwise, this whole thing meant nothing.
Preach.
Other than making players happy.
That's what it is, man. So look, I agree. I agree with what it is right now. I mean, you got to look at the numbers. We're defensively led. This is the leader of our team. And for measure, the last question in this interview was to Nick Bosa, do you know Brandon Staley well? Nick Bosa goes, no, I don't know much about him. I've obviously heard from my brother, but I don't even think I said hi or run into him yet. I'm sure I'll get to know him. Like, you dick. He had to put it out there that he purposely does not know this dude, but I've heard about him through my brother. It's like stuff like this, bro. It's a wild boy, man. He's a wild
He is
dude.
wild. He is wild. But, Bosa, I don't know. I love Bosa. He's just funny unintentionally. He really is. And, I think he's going to perform this year. But again, that's another pressure on Bosa because whether it's true or not, it really does feel like the reason that there's a new defensive coordinator in-house is because Bosa is leading the pack and not happy.
That's what it feels like.
That's the perception. Now, here's the problem with perception. Perception is reality to that individual. And the perception right now is exactly that. Whether it's true or not, nobody fully knows. It may not be true, but the perception is that Bosa is a big key cog into the reason that Wilkes is no longer here. It has to work out. And he has to perform in a big way if it's going to work out.
Thank you.
That's the irony. Cool.
My thing about that, Jesse, is that's fine. But if you are going to be the reason, like, why coaches are out of here, like, if you're going to sit on national television and throw coaches under the bus and say that we weren't prepared, when you wrap your arms around a guy, you got to go all out. Like, it can't be just one way where you're loudest. You're the loudest when you're criticized. Like, your praise got to be as loud as your criticism. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
So,
absolutely.
This is the last one for the day, man. Trench dogs. So, with the new additions to the offensive line, how do you see the new lineup of our offensive line shaping out in week 1? So, it's been known that this was the deepest offensive line draft in the past 20 years. We essentially acquired 4 offensive linemen. We picked up Dominic Pooney in earlier rounds. I think we picked up Dominic Pooney in the 3rd round of the draft. We also drafted Garrett Kingston. We picked up Nugent, an undrafted free agent out of West Virginia, another center. And we picked up some other ancillary picks and undrafted that are undrafted rookie free agents. Right now, just a couple of questions. Have we done enough at offensive line? Do you believe in the current offensive line moving forward without any changes? And if not, what changes do you see coming into week 1?
Man. I think what happens and what the best thing for this team to happen are potentially 2 different things. Realistically, I think Feliciano is probably the right guard, and then everything else is the same, right? Which means essentially everything stayed the same. I think if this offensive line is going to be at its best, then that means that Pooney is good enough to be a starter right away, which means he's probably starting at right guard. And then Feliciano, quite frankly, I think is better than Brindle and is the starting center. I mean, that would be ideal for me, but I don't know that that's necessarily how it's going to play out. Have they done enough? Well, I mean, I'm going to answer your question with a topic that I didn't throw your way, but I did make a brief video on a couple hours ago.
Okay.
And I was listening to Tom Brady. He joined Colin Cowherd on the Herd today.
Okay.
And unintentionally, he really talked about the 49ers an awful lot. I felt like he was talking directly to our fan base. But that was not the intention at all. Yeah. So here's how it basically went down. There was about a 5-minute portion of that show where he went in on how important the offensive line is, how in particular the center position is extremely important. And then he said something, and this is what really to me pertained to the San Francisco 49ers. He said, you're not going to win championships without an elite offensive line. And the team that does, it's few and far between. The only way you're going to be competitive in this league, essentially, without an elite or a very good offensive line is if you are great everywhere else. And that stuck with me more than anything because that is the 49ers.
Yeah.
They don't have the elite offensive line or the great offensive line, but they've gotten away with it because they're great everywhere else. They have arguably the best pass catchers in the league. They have arguably the best running back in the league. They have arguably the best defense in the league. They have arguably the best play caller in the league. They have arguably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. That's how they've been able to get through the lack of elite offensive line play. And here we are in a year that's really going to be a transition season. And it might be forced on them a little bit earlier than they expect, depending on injuries. But what's going to be easier? What's going to be more feasible? Building this offensive line through the draft, which they should have really started this year early on, or trying to get an all-star cast to make up for this lack of offensive line again. I'm going to say building through the draft to revamp this offensive line is probably going to be a little bit easier than replacing all the elite outside players, the running back, all the defensive positions and all of that. So I don't know. I highly encourage whether you go check it out on my channel, which I would prefer. You can go check it out there. If not, you can just go check it out on Fox and Colin Cowherd's channel or whatever. But listen to the way that Tom Brady talked about the offensive line and then ask yourself, are the 49ers meeting those standards? And then if the answer is no, which it should be, ask yourself, who do you trust more? The guy who has 7 rings in Tom Brady or the guy that's blown it 3 chances when he's had his chance in Kyle Shanahan? I'm going to listen to what Tom Brady says is more important, and that's what I'm going to stand behind. So the offensive line is something that they have to continue to address, and they need to address it earlier and earlier every year. Next year, come hell or high water, they need to have multiple high draft picks for the offensive line, whether that's round 2 and 3, round 1 and 3, 1 and 2, what have you. They have to address this thing, and they have to address it early and often. No more of this 3rd round pick. And then let's get excited about the undrafted guy, Nugent, just like we did with West a couple years ago, or Zakel, or all these other guys that didn't do squat because they're undrafted guys, and we got excited because that's what was given to us. It's like we ordered steak, and then it was like, hey, sorry, we're out of steak, but for the same price, we gave you Spam, and we're going to dress it up like it's steak, and you got all excited, and then you took a bite and was like, ah, shit, that wasn't steak, it was Spam. I was bamboozled. That's what's happened every offseason with these undrafted guys. Nugent's next in line. Maybe he'll pan out unlike the other guys, or maybe he won't. The likelihood is he probably doesn't because he was undrafted for a reason. So we'll see.
Well, you just put me right into it with the next banner right here as we're talking about it. And this is one of the reasons why the Niners will not get offensive line. I feel like this season, this offseason coming into this draft, pretty much I've just given up on them getting offensive line. Because in my opinion, offensive line outside of quarterback, and even now with quarterback now, because owners don't care that much in the investment, they'll let a quarterback go. They'll move off of him quickly. But offensive line pretty much is the only positions where this does not exist. And what I'm here to talk about is planned obsolescence. And planned obsolescence is a term that is used in consumership with different companies that provide products. And basically what it is exactly as the definition describes. It's planned obsolescence is described as the practice of designing products to break quickly or become obsolete in the short to mid-term. And the reason why planned obsolescence works is for agility. as a business. It's for you to be able to move on from the next iteration of what you've doled out for your consumership, because it makes more profit for them to move on to something else than for you to put equity into something that's going to be more bang for the buck. It may not help my profit line as a business, but if I give you a stronger product, it will help the consumer base. It's not profitable to me as a business, right? For me to make you an iPhone that will not break for 10 years, but it helps you as a consumer to actually spend $1,000 on a phone that you're not going to have to get in another year, right? And I feel as though that planned obsolescence is something that's been happening on this roster for quite some time, where one of the reasons why they won't invest in offensive line is because you can't move off of an offensive lineman who's good. An offensive lineman who you pick at a certain pick, and he gives you any type of nominal talent, turns into a Mike McGlinchey. He's going to be too good for you to let go. He's going to leave way too much of a wake in the hole for you to put anybody there that's way past the value of you getting him. And then by the time you're done playing with him, you can't afford him because there's other teams that have a market that are willing to pay for him more than what you are. And what happens is that the Niners have basically started playing money ball with their roster, and they don't want to invest in the offensive line because there's no agility. There's no movement in the position, right? And if you get a guy that can last, there's only two things you can do with a good offensive lineman. Either you can pay him or you can let him walk. That's it, because somebody else is going to pay him. And that's the reason why we get all of these beautiful numbers from Deebo Samuel making $28 million a year, and George Kittle making $17 million per, and all of these guys making this money. And the reason why they get this money up front is because either they're going to get restructured, they're going to get extended, they're going to get cut, or they're going to get moved or waived. And they're never going to see the end of that contract. But you can't do that with offensive linemen, because the value of offensive linemen stays persistent across the board, even if you were a starter. Look at what we're doing with other starters that other teams don't even want. John Feliciano, Alex Mack, you know what I'm saying? Bringing in guys that played for us, Ben Barch, all right? Bringing in guys that were journeymen or barely playing for other teams, where we're putting them on our team and actually trying to use them. The truth is that they're never going to really invest in offensive line because it's a contract that you just can't move. And then once they get good enough and they actually show value, then you have yourself where you're strapped cap-wise. The reason why BA is probably going to get his money, or the reason why Deebo is getting his money now and all these other guys, is because the truth is that come hook or crook, when the rubber meets the road, these boys ain't going to get paid that money, especially near the end of the years of their contract.
I hope you're wrong. But I don't know. I don't know what's happened to this point that could make me say that you are wrong, because this should have been the year. This was the most rich offensive line draft we've seen in quite some time, and they left it with a guy. Okay, like I'm sorry, I don't count a 6th and a 7th round pick, flyers or undrafted guys, as guys that are guys. You know, the guys that are going to be guys for you for a long period of time. Now, they may pan out, but that's luck. That wasn't a plan. That was you took the best player available and they ended up working out. That's great. But realistically, they passed on prospect after prospect after prospect that was thought to be elite. And even, quite frankly, when they took that last player, there was a better guy probably on the board in Limmer.
This whole draft
that was presumed to be a guy.
This draft was planned obsolescence, Jesse. It was. They picked these guys. Think about it. Look at the definition. The practice of designing products to break quickly or become absolutely obsolete in the short term to midterm. We signed all seniors or transfers from different schools that are seniors. Out of the rookies that we picked up, who's going to make it to their second contract?
I mean,
maybe
I got hope for some guys,
right?
But I don't know.
How many guys can you say that we drafted this year were a patch or an upgrade?
A patch. I mean,
is Ricky Pearsall an upgrade?
No, he's a
All
patch.
right. Okay, he's a patch, right? He's either here to replace somebody or to fill a hole, right? But he's not an upgrade, right? Is Ronaldo Green a patch or an upgrade?
I think he's both. And the fact that I think he can be an upgrade over whoever the second outside corner is, but he's also a patch because Mooney's likely gone after this year.
Okay. So, all right. So you say that he's a patch.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Both. But sure, I know
Dominic
that's not how the
Pooney,
game works.
Is Dominic Pooney a patch or an upgrade?
Patch probably. I mean, realistically, we want him to be there and take somebody's job, but there's a really good chance that he's here to replace Aaron Banks.
Right. Is Malik Mustafa a patch or an upgrade?
He's a patch. He's here to replace Hafunga.
Is Isaac Garendo a patch or an upgrade?
Isaac Garendo probably won't be on this team in 3 seasons.
Agreed. Is Jacob Cowing a patch or an upgrade?
Patch? A patch? If anything, I don't know.
Jarrett Kingston, is he a patch or an upgrade?
Again, he may not even be the best late offensive lineman that they took. So at best, he's a patch.
Bringing up the rear, Tatum Bethune, is he a patch or an upgrade?
He's a patch. But see, okay, but the thing is that later draft picks, I'm fine with being a patch or nothing, because that's what most late picks are. But it's the early picks that you're looking for. Hey, this guy's an upgrade.
You know what I mean? Better.
You know what I mean? Or both. Like Renardo Green, I'm fine with saying both. Like, for example, if they had taken, let's say they had taken a Suamataia, which was a guy that a lot of people liked, right? Mm-hmm. Who knows? Who knows what he ends up being? But he's a guy that a lot of people liked. If the answer on him was both, which means he's good enough now to be an upgrade over the right tackle, but hopefully he's the patch for the left tackle going forward, I'm good with that. You know what I mean? I'm good with Green being both going forward. A possible upgrade this year and a patch for Mooney next year. The Pearsall one doesn't make any sense because I don't see a scenario where he's ever better than Debo or Aiyuk. I don't even know if he'll be better than Jennings. I don't know.
I don't see it either. So I mean that's what I see now. It's not set in concrete. We don't know how this is really going to play out, but that's what I do see, man. I mean, I just need to see how they're going to dole out these rookies, and are we getting better or are we trying to regroup, right? So that's pretty much where I stand right now with the offseason. We're going to be coming up into OTAs pretty soon, coming up into training camp. I'm going to be excited to see what they do. This was a good one, Jess. You had a good show, man. How you feel about this one, bro?
It was great. It was nice being on this side of things. It's different. You know, it really is 2 different roles, because when you're the host, it's like you're constantly teeing up. Mm-hmm. But when you're a guest, like, you got to be the one that like provides the take. You know? You're asked first, so you got to be ready to provide. It's 2 completely different skill sets, even though it's all the same. You know, presumably I'm sure on the other side of the screen, it is 2 different skill sets. It really is. It's nice. It's kind of nice being on this side of things. So yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah, you got a chance to kick up your feet and just talk this time instead of like being in the chat, making sure you bring up the topics, teeing up. But it was cool, man. I had a good time, bro. But hey, every Monday, me and Jesse will be here, And we got something special for you guys coming up later on in the week when the season starts. So we got some other things that we got coming up, guys. We're really excited about it. But hey, this is the coach, and this is Jesse signing off, man. Stay low.